Okay, so last video on this, since we're on a bit of a roll here, there's Pluto in Aquarius historically, right? Let's wind the clock back to the last Pluto cycle. That's the American Revolution, French Revolution, Marx Industrial Revolution. These things are all, it just like, bam, it hits, and the entire consciousness of everything expands, right? The discovery of Uranus was during a period of human history that coincided with the discovery of the electricity. Our concept of energy, of electricity, since the last Pluto in Aquarius, is nothing short of night and day. Right? The whole world has been lit up by the harnessing of, I guess you could call it the power of the sun, right? Both in terms of nuclear fission in the period of the early 1900s with the discovery of Pluto, and the whole entire period of the Industrial Revolution, where working hours change, there's factories, right? There's a whole kind of mechanization of nature that occurs. So what we're discussing here with Pluto and Aquarius is the coincidence or co-functioning of the archetype of Pluto and the archetype of Uranus, or the archetype of Scorpio and the archetype of Aquarius. These archetypes are naturally at odds, but if you consider, right, they're in a square, right? They're in a square in terms of the fixed signs, 90-degree angle. They're in a conflict, but conflict in terms of a square is what moves things, right? It's a mover, it's a changer, and that's what is the contradiction of a fixed square, right, or a fixed cross. It moves something that doesn't want to be moved. What Aquarius seeks for in the Uranian sense is continual change and evolution and revolution, right? So if you think of a constant state of revolution, that's what Aquarius represents, or Uranus. Whereas Pluto, Scorpio, is a constant state of change and transformation. And when you bring together two forces like that, it's incredibly explosive in a sort of otherworldly sense, right? It doesn't rely. These are outer planets. This is transpersonal. This is beyond the bounds of Saturn, which is to say beyond the bounds of the fixed, the three-dimensional, the structural, the building blocks. And this kind of change can be very very cerebral. If you think about Pluto as the core, the nucleus, the essential information, the very foundation of life, right? It's kind of root energy, the seed of the soul, Pluto, Scorpio. And that exists, that state of being exists in a constant state of transformation, a constant state of change. Philosopher Plato said time is the moving image of eternity, and the philosopher Heraclitus, famous for his concept of flux, right? You can't step in the same river twice. What is born from fire is returned to fire, and that the universe, the essence, is a cosmic fire. Both fire and water are this representative of this sort of changing movement, as well as air, whereas earth is fixed in place. It can crumble, it can turn into soil, so forth. I think to be a little more specific about what I'm trying to say there is, with Aquarius, we're talking about information, electricity, energy, air, consciousness, something that is changed through the process of evolution, is changed through time, and is strange. And this is the weirdness of consciousness, is that it is the foundation that informs all things, but it's not, it's like a chemical reaction or an equation that exists beneath the surface that isn't easily, the transmutation and transmission of consciousness isn't something that's easily quantified. And this is sort of the nuanced exchange and engagement between Pluto and Aquarius, Uranus, and Scorpio, is that consciousness is that which is changed in the sort of fusion of electrical impulses, that the chemical reaction which produces the spark or the fire. Consciousness is the thing which is altered and acquired and changed through degrees of complexity, right? Like if you think of the human being as a very complex multicellular form of existence or single-celled organisms, there's no difference in terms of the molecular foundation of these organisms, right? They both proceed from the turnkey of hydrogen, which sparked the entire explosion and expansion of the universe, which will gradually kind of reform itself in a heat death to a singular point and potentially recede back into a single hydrogen atom or molecule and have this explosion and conduct itself again in this sort of expansion and contraction, as it's described in Hinduism, the breath or the Om, that the entire universe and all of existence is in a state of breath, in breath and out breath, expansion and contraction. And that's also the concept of the snake or Kundalini energy, this sort of lila of movement, this energetic movement between phases, right, state changes. That the entire universe exists in a state of flux or flow, which again is Heraclitus or Taoism. That's the energy we're talking about with Aquarius and Pluto. It's sort of the Kundalini energy, which is the center of life. There's a great Joseph Campbell quote. The goal of life is to ride like Dionysus upon the leopard without being thrown from it, right? It's this kind of craft or this art of flowing with the energetic information. And Aquarius is that entire network of energy. It's the entire network of the universal neurology. And it's this question of what it is to be human within that organization, which fundamentally that which we are, right? Both in a microcosmic and macrocosmic sense, but to move with that energy, to understand it at a deeper and more intimate and innate level. And that is what consciousness is in real terms. Consciousness recognizes itself through the experience of itself and understands that this is fundamentally what I am, and this is fundamentally what is at work. Again, this is the Aquarian emphasis on science and sort of the mad scientist. It's esoteric information. And this is where Pluto, despite some people would call it debilitated, it's nonsense to me, despite that kind of square between Aquarius and Scorpio, this is where there is a very informative kind of esoteric current of energy, which is the electricity or the information or the flow of cosmic mind through the universe, which the seed, right, intimately takes part through the roots and the trees and the neurologies and the veins. And this Pluto in Aquarius is going to explore that deeply and scientifically, and that will also help us understand what it is to be human. Because as we understand, and I referenced Philip Mainlander in his publication, is that what we receive and process is neurological information. It's processed neurologically, and as we can see with the roots of the trees or the cells, right, and we can see these different processes occurring at a macrocosmic and microcosmic level due to astrophysics, due to concepts of biology, chemistry, which have been studied very, very intently, and we've had amazing amounts of growth since the last Pluto and Aquarius cycle. We are now coming to deeper understandings of what it is to be human in a material sense, and then obviously in a spiritual sense, right? Where do we stand? What is our role? What does this complex mechanism of the brain do? What do we observe? What can we see? And what does consciousness change? And we understand that consciousness is nature and changes nature in its revelation of it. So interesting stuff. Good to talk with you guys.